Good morning here. Evan doing the book club out of the 4 agreements. Today is March 14th, 2023, and today with me...
I've got Justin Burch again here.
Yeah, no Tristan today. The first no-show we have on him, but we'll give him some grace and we won't take it personally because that's what this chapter is all about. So the second agreement is do not take anything personally. And that was an interesting one because there's a lot to that. It was a really quick chapter. It was only like 15 pages or if even that. But it was pretty packed full of interesting stuff. So I'll open up to you, Justin, and see what you came up with some notes. And I have some questions as well myself, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The first note I have here, and I don't have the book right in front of me, so connecting these dots. My note here is, what can we learn from the feedback and critiques we receive from people? So in the book, they do a reference if somebody were to walk down the street and just say, hey, you're stupid, is that your problem or is that their problem? But also going even further on that, if people are to deliver some kind of nugget to you and it's hurtful or offensive, there's usually some kind of truth in there in a lot of cases, right? So, if we can open that up and dig deeper and kind of find out, what's the nugget of truth in here and how can I use that to make myself better?
Yeah, I like that a lot. It was interesting when what really stood out to me is that, the not taking good things personally too.
Yeah.
So kind of the both, because it's real easy. I'm doing a lot of work right now about like not taking things personally on the negative side, because it really is a reflection of them. And I understand that intuitively and through my spiritual journey and through understanding a lot of work there, right? But like the flip side of that, the other side of the coin is not taking the good things personally as well, because I find value and I can attribute value from positive things. And so that also does stroke the ego. It does help, you can't have one without the other. It's because if I'm accepting the good, then I'm also acknowledging that if there's not the good, then there's a void there, right? So it's actually acknowledging that you're susceptible to not having it, which could affect you as well. I thought that was interesting. And yeah, the other things that come up for me is, I think a lot of times, and this is work I'm doing myself, but like you get paralyzed by what other people might think, right? Or that just like your self-judgment or the judgment of what you perceive someone else is thinking about you. And just the idea of that is kind of interesting because really their story about you has nothing to do with you. It really is about them and their own journey and what's going on in their life. And so if you can, as the work continues, you can recognize that easier, that if they're saying something mean or saying something that's inappropriate or saying something that's not really that true, then you don't have to take it personally. But you also can examine, like you said.
Yeah. So like you said, the other side of that too is if it's something positive, like, okay, somebody says something negative to you when they're having a bad day. Somebody says something positive. Is that because they truly believe that about you, or is that because they're feeling themselves that day? And they're like, I'm just going to spread this, which nothing wrong with that. Hey, you spread positivity. But again, their story is often not about you. That's a good point.
Yeah. And that's, it's interesting when you recognize that, because the good creates more good, just like the bad creates more bad. Sure. So like, one of the things that I have but I incorporate is hurt people, and healed people, heal people. Yeah. And so what does that do? That just means that you're bringing that energy out. Like, so if you're still a victim and you're still feeling like you're hurt a bunch, then you're going to lash out at other people, and that's going to continue that cycle of negative coming back towards you, versus the people that have done the work and have continually tried to heal, elicit that in other people. And that healing energy is out there. It's super interesting. One of the questions I had is, what are some of the ways you've taken things personally? Do you believe that the opinions of others are more important than your own? This was one of those other interesting facets of it, is like, not only outside of us, but inside of us too. We have warring conversations, right? About our, the mitote or whatever they called it. The different voices we hear in our heads. Some are good, some are bad, some are saying negative things, some are saying positive things, and then, which ones are you choosing to listen to? And how do we, not taking it personally?
Yeah, absolutely. And which ones are based in actual facts versus just outright feelings?
Yeah, and not getting too emotionally wrapped up in it.
I think that's where we cause a lot of trouble for ourselves, is the whole feelings,
Yeah.
Which, not to say they're not valid, but often they're not based in fact.
This one, I'm doing, there's a lot of work in this area myself for sure. Do not take it personally if someone disagrees with you. And I think that's, in today's climate in America, politically, all the socioeconomic, everything, it's like, if you don't agree with me, then we're enemies. And really, like, our country was founded on the idea that we're all kind of coming together with different opinions, and that's what makes us better, right? We're the melting pot. And hopefully, obviously it starts with our own self, but as we're remembering that, it helps bring some stability to it, right? So it's not these extremes.
Sure.
Appreciating differences.
Yeah, having a little middle ground and nuance it's a tough thing to do. But
Yeah.
I would think it would take us pretty far.
Yeah, and social media makes it harder to do that. In person, it's a lot easier to recognize the importance of differences. I feel like, the value in that is that I guess the question would be, how do we ask the question if I'm right or I'm wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying that's a bad question. Am I right? That's a wrong, a better question is, how can we both be right? Because it's like, how do you ask that? The question could be that we're actually both right in our own, there's just another way of looking at it. There's not always only two options, right? So this polar thing, it's like me versus you, is really problematic. And then you do take it personally, and we get into camps and we disagree and feel supported by that same group. And it's interesting. This chapter just really illustrates that none of that is really about you. It's just don't buy into that. Really,
it's no one's truth but yours is one of the lines.
Yeah. And I wrote another little question about what about taking good feedback, right? Personally, and that's a really interesting shift in that chapter. It's like, well, yeah, I can work on not taking things negative personally, and I know it's about them, but then not wanting to, or not necessarily not wanting to receive good feedback, but just not making it really that important. It's really self-validating. Hey, what value am I attributing to this myself versus this external circumstance or its external stimuli?
Did you see the movie Whiplash by any chance, about the drummer?
No.
So it's a pretty intense movie, but basically this college kid is a musician, and he has a really, really intense relationship with his instructor. And his instructor at one point says the most damaging words you can tell somebody are "good job." Because at that point, they feel like they can let off the gas, kind of coast a little bit, and they're not pushing themselves as much. So I could see that playing into that mindset of accept a compliment or whatever it is, but stay on your path. Right?
Yeah. This is very much in the Stoicism too. Obviously,
so much.
It's super interesting. They're all these parallels to all the books we've been reading in this group. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of any other little notes.
Humans are addicted to suffering and help each other suffer.
Yeah.
There's a quote from that I thought was pretty interesting, and I think that plays back into what you were talking about with people butting heads on social media and stuff like that. They're assisting each other to suffer, to no real end.
Yeah.
Because there's not a true conversation happening.
No. Yeah, they like you said, they're punishing themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're not necessarily knowingly doing it, but they're subscribing to this agreement, hey, I'm going to be vicious to you and you're going to be vicious to me. And
Absolutely.
We're both going to deserve that because we're both being vicious.
Sure, yeah. And
I underlined this one, which was interesting. Immunity to the poison in the middle of hell is the gift of this agreement. So you can be in the middle of chaos, in the middle of hell, in the middle of whatever, negative, but if you're just not subscribing to the fact that it's about you and everything else is out there and that's their own stories, it's really you are kind of immune to it.
Can you read that like one more time and
Yeah.
slow it down a little bit?
Yeah. So
Let brain
immunity,
process this.
immunity to the poison in the middle of hell is the gift of this agreement. Meaning, I mean, the way I receive that is that the poison of receiving good and negative compliments, of having your own value determined by something outside of you, is, you're immune to that influence if you're just not taking things personally.
Sure. Yeah. I think ownership was like the thing that kept playing back in my head as I would go through some of this chapter, this agreement. It was all about ownership.
Yeah.
Because like you're owning your feelings, you're owning the way that other people make you feel, or if you let them make you feel. So I feel like that was a big theme in this one. I don't know if you thought.
Yeah, all of these books are, that's definitely the kind of the continual theme throughout all this is personal responsibility and not being a victim, because we create our lives. That's what I firmly believe, is that we create our lives with our thoughts, words, and actions. And it's not really anyone else's responsibility. It's like we do that. So what does that mean? If we're in a shitty situation, well, we kind of created that. And we can determine if it's shitty or not, and we can redefine it as a lesson or a blessing or a way to like show up in a particular way, or knowing that, hey, this is going to be hard or whatever, but I'll learn something from it. But yeah, owning it, because it's so easy to be a victim, particularly nowadays. Like everyone wants to be a victim to everything, and it's you just have no power that way. And I think another one I underlined here is, either way, it does not affect me because I know what I am. I do not need to be accepted. And that's it's just part of the journey, right? Of like knowing you're good, knowing that you don't need outside. And that's really that deep, deep knowing of that you're good regardless. And so that people ascribe that to the higher power, to Jesus, to the meditation, to Buddha, to your own self-development. But I've been finding more spirituality. I've been going back to church, and I was out of church for a long time, but now I'm back into it. And it's just like knowing that I don't have to do it all myself. It's just like this such a powerful, powerful thought that like there's something else, right? And like
companion.
And so like you can bounce that off, that idea and that relationship, and it's not dependent on anything outside of you. It's all inside. We create that relationship ourselves. And so that's been really like transformational in the last like few months for me. It's just less and less needing to worry about outside and worry like my relationship with myself and with God. It's been interesting. So
do you feel like it allows you to like pass off some of the burden of some of the suffering in a way?
Yeah, because it's that paradox of ultimate responsibility, right? But also like knowing that it's not like there's something else that's helping you. And so it's not only your responsibility. Like it's just like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like this knowing that I'm responsible, but also that there's someone else bigger and greater than me. And maybe that, some people would say it's their higher self. I'm like, I believe that relationship with God is that can't be taken away. So it's like you have that inside you, and it's nothing that's like external, I should say. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting journey, man. But this book, these exercises and this book club and these, this looking inside is really where you gain a lot of value.
Yeah, I mean, as tough as the work is, I think there's a deep comfort from having a sense of self-ownership. Just gives you a little confidence to walk through the world.
Yeah. What else you got?
I got one last thing on my list here, and I really like this. Do not expect people to tell you the truth because they even lie to themselves. I just thought that was pretty cool concept.
Yeah. And they might not even know they're lying to themselves, or they're really good at tricking themselves to believing that what they believe.
Sure, I think it's definitely like a snowball effect. Like, just like any lie, starts very small,
mm-hmm.
and then it comes to the point where it's a distorted reality, right? And then people eventually do start believing this line that they told themselves to not have that fear, because he talks a lot about that being one of the main drivers of people's insecurities, people lying. It's fear-based.
Yeah.
Right? They're afraid that you're going to find out they're not perfect, is what they mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think we all have that we're afraid to be found out in some way.
Yeah, that there's being vulnerable and recognizing that we're all screwed up. And we all have our insecurities and fears and personal, internal judgments, but that's part of the human condition, and that we're not alone in that. And that's actually really comforting, knowing that other people are going through that, and they're still finding value in like working the work, doing the work. I mean, I find a lot of value in that.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know if anything else, but it's a quick little one today.
Yeah, quick and dirty.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, though.
The next chapter is another good one, but don't make assumptions. And this is it leads right into it, right?
So it's on itself.
Yeah. Don't take things personally, and don't make assumptions. When we assume that people are doing things in a particular way, that's a bad assumption, and then you're going to take it personally. So,
All the time.
yeah, it's our work, man. Well, anyways, have a blessed day out there. Take care, and we're going to get ready for jiu-jitsu. See ya.
Bye.